So Earth's Mightiest Heroes was my first introduction to a lot of the expanded Marvel Universe. One of those heroes being Ant-Man. When I was a kid, Ant-Man was relatively more obscure and wasn't as well known of a hero, so when I saw his EMH version, I really enjoyed it. But unfortunately for me, when I looked at his other versions, whether that be in the comics or other movies, it is very unfortunate. Specifically how they handle Ant-Man's conflict with his wife, or the way in which they decided to handle his multiple personality disorder, all seems messy and convoluted. Something that Earth's Mightiest Heroes really streamlined. Without further ado, Ant-Man's first arc in Earth's Mightiest Heroes is about trying to become a hero. The entire time Ant-Man is shown in this TV show, he is a known pacifist. He does not like to fight, he does not like to get into fights. He would rather believe in rehabilitation of those who are struggling, especially villains. He believes they all can be rehabilitated no matter what they've done. And he tries his best to avoid conflict as much as he can, but there is a part of him that somewhat enjoys the conflict, almost revels in it, and that's kind of shown in his first episode. He gets a kick out of scaring Claw away from stealing vibranium. And this leads us to our introduction of Pym's other half, that being Janet Van Dyne, or the Wasp. Pym and Janet in this show have a very nice relationship as comparatively to their comics versions, but it almost feels like two teenagers dating rather than two adults. I'm unsure of what age they're supposed to be in this show, but I'm going to assume they're supposed to be adults. Janet is almost the complete opposite to Hank. She is easily excitable, easily distracted, absolutely in love with her powers, very, very outgoing. Pretty much the opposite of Hank's more introverted, scientistic, and reserved. Their differing natures often lead the two to butt heads, especially when Janet doesn't really believe in the same rehabilitation that Pym does. She just wants to kick the enemy's butt and send them off to prison. And so the first chance Janet gets, she takes it to go be a superhero, even if Pym has absolutely zero interest in doing the same thing. Janet seems to take a lot of enjoyment and revelry in mocking the enemies that she fights and sort of egging them on throughout the street, whereas Hank Pym is very much just, let me get this done, let me get it out of the way, and let me focus on rehabilitating the person that's right in front of me. And this causes the first argument between these two that we see in the show, of what will be many. But their argument is cut short as they have to go drop off Whirlwind to S.H.I.E.L.D., where Hank Pym is currently hosting his next big invention, a way in which you can rehabilitate these villains in a more humane and small space. Essentially, Hank Pym has shrunk down each and every one of these villains and has set them up with an Ultron. It's supposed to be a very human, almost therapist, in hopes these robots would do a better job of rehabilitating these villains than, say, regular people who might be biased against them, especially when it comes to the personnel at S.H.I.E.L.D., whom Hank, of course, butts heads with often, believing they don't have the interest of reforming the villains at their true core, and instead would rather keep it. And when invited to join S.H.I.E.L.D. as a member of a team, Hank Pym sternly declines.
Thank you.
You want to recruit us? For real?
What you've done, Dr. Pym? Giving yourself and Janet powers?
Stop. If you're just interested in having your own superhuman soldiers, the answer is no.
Look, Ant-Man.
I agreed to work with S.H.I.E.L.D. to help people like Whirlwind, not to do more fighting. I'm not gonna make weapons for you. You've already got Tony Stark for that.
Hank would often spend his free time inside of the big house, as he calls it, talking to each and every one of the villains. And in this occasion, he's trying to figure out why Whirlwind and another villain were having a conversation, sort of getting buddy-buddy about a potential escape. As it turns out, the entire big house, along with the cube, another housing unit for a bunch of supervillains, the raft, and of course they as well broke out of the vault. Now this was all spearheaded by a man named Gravitron. You see, Gravitron was a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent that was trying to recreate the super soldier serum, and in the process ended up giving himself a bunch of powers and causing him to go insane with vengeance against Nick Fury. Now, Wasp, of course, wants to immediately get involved. She sees Iron Man and Thor duking it out with the Gravitron and wants to go save people. Hank, on the other hand, does not want almost anything to do with this. He does not want to be involved. But the second Janet is being harmed by Gravitron, Hank jumps into action immediately. And that's something you'll see throughout most of the first season, is that anytime Janet is in any sort of danger, Hank Pym will step in and turn into Giant Man. You see, he never turns into Ant-Man whenever Janet is in danger. He almost always turns into Giant Man, and I think that was an intentional thing done by the writers to show that when he wants to protect Jan, he needs to channel something other than just being Ant-Man. He chooses to be Giant. With Gravitron defeated by the Avengers, it's fair to take note that this is the original core Avengers team that showed up in the first comic book issue, that being Iron Man, Giant Man / Ant-Man, Hulk, Wasp, and Thor. Now, Nick Fury once again offers the Avengers another job to work with him, but Ant-Man steps in. He basically says, I don't want to work for you and be used as a tool to fight people and essentially be used as military attack dogs. But Iron Man has another suggestion, that maybe Fury is right, that they can accomplish more together rather than alone, and he suggests that they all join as a team under one banner as the Avengers, a separate entity from S.H.I.E.L.D. And of course, that's exactly what they do. Iron Man spends about a week or two building Avengers Mansion. He gets it all kitted out with just about everything you'd need to be a hero. And this is kind of the end of Hank's first arc. He has become a hero, even if it is reluctantly. This leads nicely into Hank Pym's next arc, which is a sort of mini arc between him and Tony. These two are two sides of the same coin, right? One of them is an eccentric genius billionaire who is willing to make weapons and do whatever it takes to make money, or at least he was. Hank Pym, on the other hand, is a genius philanthropist who is not rich, and all he cares about is helping other people, doing what he can the best. This leads him to get into a fairly big argument with Tony early into this episode.
I'm not judging you. I'm just saying that you value money and business over people.
How is that not judging?
I've seen it before, that's all.
All right, enough. You've been glaring at me for weeks, ever since the breakout. This isn't about Simon. This is about Ultron.
No, it's about you valuing money and business over people. Ultron was just the first time I realized who you really are.
5 years ago, Tony and Hank Pym had worked on a creature called Ultron together, a robot that would map human brain waves onto itself and act as a sort of human companion. Tony at the time wanted to use it as a weapon for mass destruction, and Hank Pym, on the other hand, wanted to use it to help people. Now, in this episode, Tony has recently bought out the company of William Innovations, which has sparked this argument between the two because Hank Pym believes that Tony's going to use this company to make more weapons. Now, unfortunately, the person Tony bought this company from does not want to give it up. He is afraid to give it up. Driven by the fear that Tony might turn his company into nothing but a weapons manufacturer, he takes a deal with the supervillains, i.e. Baron Zemo and specifically Amora the Enchantress, in order to get the powers he needs to stop Tony from taking control of his business. Now, Tony obviously is not going to let this dude rampage around as a supervillain, but he goes about it in a very strange way. He is antagonistic and extremely attackative of this person, whereas Hank Pym, i.e. Ant-Man, is trying to talk him down and speak to him on a more human level. You see, Simon's energy form was becoming highly unstable, and he was starting to dissipate. Tony was trying to help him, but was doing it in a very unconventional way. Tony actually bought Simon's company in order to work with him to make inventions to better the future, but his past was what caused this to happen, his past actions. And I think Hank Pym really sees that in this episode and starts to understand that this Tony Stark isn't the same man that he was dealing with 5 years ago. And I think it's a real eye-opener for Hank Pym for at least this early part of the first season. Heading into the next mini arc, it is all about Janet and Hank's relationship and how she's sort of frustrated that Hank takes almost little to no interest in their relationship. He is solely focused on the science, the helping other people, and he's not one for making these big gestures of love or really wanting to go out to parties with Janet like she wants to. But Janet is handling it in a fairly immature way, basically being a jerk to Hank about it.
You're being kind of horrible to him, you know that, right?
Who?
Hank, genius. You can tell he's upset.
Oh no, see, you actually have to have emotions before you can get upset.
Jan, you have to know that you've got him wrapped around your finger.
Whatever. From day one, it's been strictly business. Well, strictly science.
Now, I definitely won't give Hank a pass. He has been a pretty terrible boyfriend, oftentimes putting science above the person he's in a relationship with or just ignoring her. Thankfully for him, he gets bailed out by the fact that a literal alien invader has landed inside of this telescope area, and now they have to go find out a way to deal with it before it, either destroys the world or doesn't. And of course, once again, when Janet's life is put on the line, Hank goes giant man in order to go deal with this robot that seemingly wants to destroy extraterrestrial communication. As it turns out, this is a Kree destroyer robot. It has been sent here to scout out the Earth as a potential living space for the Kree, and has essentially decided to destroy everyone here on Earth. But that doesn't really work out, as the Avengers show up and destroy the thing, and eventually take care of the bomb that it is also holding. But during the process of all of this, Ant-Man ends up severely injured and in the hospital. And as a result, we get a really sweet heart-to-heart between Janet and an unconscious Hank.
I'm sorry, Hank. I'm so sorry. For being so mean, for the way I treat you, for everything.
Wow. Are you sure you're not an alien? I take it we didn't blow up.
But unfortunately, this doesn't, in the long run, have any major substantial things when it comes to their relationship, other than playing up the joke that Hank has refused to say that he loves her throughout this whole show. Now, this leads nicely into the next major arc for Hank, which is his morals versus his own duties. Since the big house was destroyed, Hank has been trying to find a new housing unit for all these supervillains, a place in which his Ultrons can do the best work they possibly can in order to help rehabilitate these people. And he has decided that he's landed upon a place that cannot be broken out of, because it's all the way in the negative zone. Now, Hank's trip to the negative zone is cut short when Captain America and Iron Man are both attacked by Kang the Conqueror, a man from the future who is willing to wage war and conquer Earth, all in order to save them from Captain America in the future. I go more in depth about this in the Captain America video if you haven't seen this by now. Shameless plug over, Ant-Man is integral in getting the Avengers back to modern day Earth when Kang takes them 10 years in the future. He's also integral in taking Kang down. Now, Kang is a particularly sore loser, and he decides that he will not only escape, but wage war on the Avengers and on Earth. Now, Kang has technological superiority in the craziest way possible. He has these robots that are self-replicating, self-repairing, and essentially unbeatable, an unlimited army from the future that is essentially giving the Avengers and everyone else an extremely hard time in dealing with them. S.H.I.E.L.D. is ineffective, the Avengers are ineffective, and they truly need another fighting force to help them get through this.
This is war, and we need an army.
I know where you can find an army.
So now Hank is at a crossroads, and he has to choose between whether or not he is going to keep his morality and his morals intact, or whether or not he is going to set up these hundreds or thousands of Ultrons that he has up for war. The things he made specifically to be good, to help people, and he got so upset with Tony for inventing weapons for, he now has to turn into killing machines, all of that in order to save the Earth. Now, Hank, of course, does not feel great about this, but his back is against a wall. He has to choose between his responsibility or this. And it gets even worse when Ultron literally almost destroys Kang's ship, which would not only send him back in time, but inadvertently kill Queen Ravonna, Kang's wife. The entire reason Kang is really here is to save his wife and save his conquered planets. Now, when Hank Pym does find this out, that his invention almost wiped out an entire future, he is, of course, left distraught and really questioning what he's doing here as a hero, or even if he is a hero in this situation. Now, with Hank dealing with all these negative thoughts and emotions, that leads us into our next arc, which is him versus what would eventually be his own creation. This starts with Hank stopping the Avengers from fighting a group of villains and trying his best to handle it in a peaceful situation. He doesn't want to fight anymore. He does not believe in fighting anymore. He doesn't think it's doing any good to beat up on these villains, and he genuinely just wants to see them reformed. But unfortunately, this results in one of the Avengers, Hawkeye, being injured by the villains, as they don't really share the same sentiment that he does.
We're trying to take the Serpent Society down, not have Sunday tea.
Hawkeye got hurt because of you, Hank. I mean, seriously, they're supervillains. You just hit them.
Wasp and Iron Man speak truly. Animals like these, they cannot be talked to. They respond only to violence.
I quit.
Hank is probably severely depressed at this point. He doesn't believe that anything he is doing is right or anything that he is doing is good. He essentially believes that he is causing more problems than he is solving. Hank is vehemently upset by all of these things and is just talking to the last remaining Ultron while trying to figure out what he's going to do now that he's no longer an Avenger. Wasp, on the other hand, is arguing to bring Hank back to the team and that everybody should be rallying to go get him back on the team. But of course, Iron Man is basically saying, look, Hank was only here for you, Janet. He doesn't really care about this team. He's a pacifist. We might as well let him go. And Wasp does not take this very well, and she goes after Hank to try and convince him to come back. Wasp fails to bring Hank back and decides to leave, but Ultron at this point has gone full I must save the world mode and starts with trying to kill Hank Pym, and since Ultron cannot hurt Janet Van Dyne, being that he is trained on Hank's brainwaves, he decides to capture her instead. Ultron has devised a plot to destroy all of the Avengers, all simply because he believes the only way to stop the chaos in the world is if he takes over and eliminates all humans, believing that we are all evil, corruptible, and essentially the reason there is war, death, and anything else in the world. Now, when the Avengers try to attack Ultron, having brought whatever they have left, considering all their technology has been taken away, it does not end well at all. Thor ends up rushing headlong against Ultron and ends up being vaporized. Thor literally dies here and is killed, at least according to the rest of the Avengers, all while Hank is still unconscious. When Hank is woken up by Tony Stark while the other Avengers are distracting Ultron and informed of the fact that his own creation caused the death of one of his close friends, he is distraught and pretty much single-minded in the idea that he has to take down Ultron to atone for the sins he committed, essentially. And so Hank goes off, gets back into his Ant-Man suit, and tries to confront Ultron, to almost no effect. He basically isn't able to do a whole lot against Ultron as his shutdown code no longer works. But when the Avengers are eventually able to beat Ultron 5, Hank is still feeling the same as before.
Getting Ultron shells and programming. Destroy everything. Everything.
Of course. But it doesn't change anything. Thor is gone and I'm the one that gave Ultron the power to do it. This is all my fault.
Now, Hank is, of course, distraught by the fact that not only one of his friends was killed by what he believes to be his own hand, but the fact that Ultron was trained on his own brainwaves. Hank had made Ultron a map of himself. So Hank sees this as him killing his own friend. Essentially, it was his fault because he did it. That's how he feels, even if it doesn't sound completely rational. Now, him and Tony are talking this out when they begin to realize that Ultron 5 hasn't just been uploaded once or twice. He's been uploaded quite a few times. As a matter of fact, Ultron has been uploaded within the last 5 hours. As it turns out, they didn't just defeat his shell, they failed to defeat Ultron the program. I just want to take a quick second to kind of gush about how much I love this version of Ultron. He is as menacing and as scary and as indestructible as the one from Avengers Heroes of Tomorrow, and his voice is so amazing as well. I just think it's really well done. Now, Ultron's plot is to literally nuke everyone to death on Earth because he believes that humans are the reason for everyone's wrongdoing, right? So he's going to just nuke them all to death because that makes sense. So now this is where Hank comes in with a plan. He has decided that he is going to try and defeat Ultron with logic. He's going to go inside of Ultron and try to explain to him that, hey, guess what? You're trained off of human brainwaves and patterns, so you are part of the problem. Essentially telling Ultron that he is the problem, and so Ultron deactivates himself. Oh, and Thor is alive. He just was spending time with Amora, the Enchantress. Yeah, he didn't end up dying. But that doesn't change Hank's mind at all. He still does not any longer believe in what the Avengers stand for. He doesn't even believe in what he's doing anymore. So Hank just decides to quit the team. He's done, and in the process, he's almost like quitting his relationship with Wasp, just kind of leaving her. This takes us to our final character arc of this episode. Hank is coming out of retirement one last time. Again, when Janet is in danger, Hank shows up in Giant Man form to protect her. Hank always will protect Janet, at least in this first season. It's the one thing he truly cares about, even if it means facing insurmountable odds to do so. Going up against what would eventually be frost giants as Loki's plot to sort of take over the 9 realms kicks into action near the end of this season. Hank ended up on the world of Jotunheim when he was sent through the 9 realms, and Wasp was incapacitated on the way there, so now Hank must take care of Wasp and defend her from frost giants, and that is exactly what he's going to do. He is willing to fight for Janet, even if it means going against what he believes in being an Avenger. And it takes all of this just for him to finally admit how he feels to an unconscious Wasp.
I'm sorry, Jan. I'm so sorry that I let you down. That I let everyone down. I love you.
Sif, led by the Valkyries, end up saving Hank and Janet while they are both in need. But Hank's revelation that he says finally that he loves Janet is a really big thing for Hank, as he's been avoiding saying this the entire show, all the way harkening back to the episode in which the alien landed on the planet and they found out it was a Kree invader. Now, Hank ends up joining the Avengers in a bid to stop Loki, and it doesn't really end well. I mean, Loki at this point has the power of Odin and steamrolls over the Avengers. They're essentially stalling and waiting for Odin to wake up, regain his powers, and teach Loki a lesson. And when Odin does, not only does he take down Loki, but he goes to congratulate the mortals that helped save his realm. But Hank still just doesn't really look pleased to be there. He doesn't really want to be. And so Hank does just kind of disappear after this for a while, leaving Janet and the Avengers behind for something new.
What I want is to see scum like you punished once and for all. Who are you? The name's Yellow Jacket.
Alright, so that was Earth's Mightiest Heroes interpretation of Ant-Man, Giant Man, whatever you want to call him, depending on how Hank was feeling that day, and a little bit on Wasp. I really enjoyed this take on Ant-Man. I thought it was a very good way of balancing the more outlandish him beating his wife plots from the comics, but also dealing with his dissociative identity disorder in a far better manner in this variant. As well, his arguments with his wife and their conflicts feel more real. Those two are just polar opposites who probably aren't good for each other. Hence why they're not really together in the second season very much. Then again, Hank is pretty absent from the second season. But, you know, maybe we'll get to that one day. I just want to take a second to truly thank you all for watching this video. The support on the last video was absolutely insane. I mean, I knew I'd get to 1,000 one day. I didn't think it was going to be so soon. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. You all made this possible, and for that, I am so truly appreciative. So again, thank you all so much. If you liked the video, like it. If you dislike it, dislike it. You know, give me some feedback. Let me know what you all want to see down in the comments below. And if you want to support me as a creator just beyond subbing or hitting the like button or commenting, I do have a Patreon. It's about $1 a month. You'll get to see all my videos unedited and early. So again, thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.